The leaves of the crimson wood were not just falling, they were screaming. Each scarlet and amber leaf tore from its branch with a sound like tearing silk. A cascade of fire against the slate-grey sky, on the ground, amidst this symphony of dying beauty, knelt a girl whose world had ended 3 hours ago. Lyra Moonshadow pressed her palms into the cold, damp earth, feeling the chill seep into her bones, a physical echo of the ice in her veins. Her breath came in ragged gasps that fogged the air. But she made no sound. The silence inside her was a vast, hollow cathedral where the echoes of her pack's rejection still bounced off the walls of her soul. A meager, useless, a drain, a stain. The words were not just spoken, they were branded. Alpha Brutus's voice, thick with disdain, had cleaved her life into before the entire Night Fang pack, 22 years of loyalty, of quiet service, of hoping her gentle nature was enough, erased in a single, brutal decree. She was packless, nameless, nothing. The sun was a dying ember on the horizon as Lyra gathered her pitiful belongings, a threadbare shawl, a chipped clay bowl that had been her mother's, a blunt skinning knife. Each item was a relic of a life that no longer existed. With a final, aching look at the distant glow of the pack's fires, she turned and walked into the moor of the Whispering Woods. It was a place of last resorts, where rogues vanished and nightmares took root. For a rejected Omega, it was simply a slower death sentence. The woods lived up to their name. As night fell, the sounds were not of beasts, but of whispers. The wind through the pines sounded like hissed conversations. The creak of ancient boughs mimicked mournful sighs. Lyra wrapped her shawl tighter, its scant warmth no match for the dread pooling in her stomach. She walked until her feet bled, until time became meaningless, guided only by the weak light of a crescent moon. Then she heard it, a sound that cut through the whispering chaos, a low, pained groan, so human it stole her breath. It was the sound of a soul in its final moments. Every instinct, honed by a lifetime of being told she was prey, screamed at her to run. But a deeper, more stubborn part, the part that had nursed injured birds and cried over fallen fawns, rooted her to the spot. She pushed through a curtain of thorny briar, the branches clawing at her arms and face, and stumbled into a small, moon-drenched clearing, and there she saw him. He was collapsed against the gargantuan roots of a heartwood tree, a figure of ruined majesty, even broken. He was immense, broad shoulders now slumped, long limbs twisted at unnatural angles. His dark hair was a matted curtain over a face that was all sharp, aristocratic lines, even beneath the grime and dried blood. But it was his eyes that made her heart stutter. They were open, staring at the stardusted sky, but they saw nothing. A milky, opalescent film clouded them, reflecting the moon like pale dead mirrors. He was blind. Please, the word was a raw scrape of sound from his throat. Is anyone there? Lyra stood frozen. This was trouble. This was danger. This was a burden her broken spirit could not possibly carry. She took a half-step back. A twig snapped under her foot. His head turned toward the sound with unnerving precision. Who's there? The fear in his voice was not for an attacker, but for the emptiness, for being truly alone. It was a fear she knew intimately. Her resolve crumbled. She stepped forward, her movement soft. I won't hurt you, she murmured, her voice barely louder than the rustling leaves. My name is Lyra. Lyra. He repeated it as if it were a lifeline thrown into a dark sea. I can't remember. I don't know my name. His hand flailed weakly, searching the empty air beside him. A fresh ache bloomed in Lyra's chest. He had lost everything, even his own identity. That's all right, she said, kneeling beside him. Heedless of the damp earth, we'll find a name for you. Can you move? My leg, he gasped. It's wrong. A quick, gentle assessment confirmed it. His left leg was badly broken, swollen grotesquely. Fever radiated from his skin, and through the rips in his fine linen shirt, she could count every rib. He was a prince of shadows, starved and shattered. She had found a sheltered overhang earlier that day, a shallow cave barely worthy of the name. "I have a place," she heard herself say, the decision settling on her shoulders with terrifying weight. "It's not far. I can help you, if you'll trust me." His blind eyes seemed to pierce her anyway. "Why?" he breathed. "You don't know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Lyra looked at his broken body, at the vacant eyes, at the tremor in his soiled hands. "I know what it is to be thrown away," she said, the truth of it sharp on her tongue. "And I will not do that to another living soul." A profound silence followed, broken only by his shaky exhale. Then a single tear traced a clean path through the dirt on his cheek. "All right," he whispered. "I trust you." The journey to the cave was an ordeal of sweat, pain, and stifled cries. He was far heavier than he looked, and Lyra's meager strength was not meant for this. They fell, they struggled, they inched forward. By the time she half-dragged, half-carried him into the shallow stone hollow, both were trembling with exhaustion. She settled him on her only shawl, then built a small, precise fire, its light pushing back the oppressive dark. As she worked, she spoke, needing to anchor him. "What do you remember? Anything at all?" Long moments passed. Then his voice, hollow and distant, filled the space. "Running, fear, like a taste in my mouth, steel, flashing, the smell of pine and betrayal." He shuddered, then falling, and darkness, and cold, so much cold. "How long have you been out here?" "Time is formless, a day, a year, without the sun on your face. It all bleeds together." She brought him water in her mother's clay bowl, guiding it to his lips. He drank with a desperate urgency that spoke of utter dehydration. "Thank you," he rasped, collapsing back. "I have nothing to offer you." "Your life is not a transaction," Lyra said firmly. She examined his leg by firelight. "This will be painful. The bone needs setting." He offered a grim, shadowed smile. "Pain is an old companion. Do what you must." The sound of the bone grating into place would haunt Lyra's dreams. He did not scream, but a guttural, animal sound was torn from him, and his body went rigid before slumping into unconsciousness. She worked swiftly, splinting the leg with stripped branches and binding it with lengths of cloth torn from the hem of her dress. When she finished, she was crying silent tears for his pain, for her helplessness, for the sheer, overwhelming tragedy of it all. As she cleaned the other wounds, deep gashes that spoke of swords, not claws, she noticed details. His hands, despite recent injuries, were not the hands of a laborer or a warrior. They were long-fingered, almost elegant. His speech, even through pain, carried a formal, educated cadence. And on his left pectoral, partly obscured by dirt and a vicious burn, was the ghost of a mark, not a scar, but a tattoo, or perhaps a birthmark. It looked like the tip of a crescent moon, intertwined with thorns. A marking she had only heard of entails the sigil of the royal Silverspire bloodline. The thought was so absurd she dismissed it immediately. Royals did not end up blind and broken in the Whispering Woods. They lived in their mountain fortress of Moonshadow Keep, far from such mundane suffering. He stirred as she applied a poultice of crushed yarrow. "You're still here," he murmured, disbelieving. "I promised," she said simply. "Lyra, your name. It means night song. Does it not?" "It does," she whispered, surprised. "It suits you. In this darkness, your voice is the only melody I have." The words, so earnestly spoken, sent an unfamiliar warmth through her. She said nothing, simply continuing her work until he fell into a fitful sleep. Lyra kept watch. The fire between them, studying the stranger she had tethered her fate to. Who was he? What storm had he fled? And why did the thought of him being hunted make her own blood run cold? Days melted into a routine of survival. Lyra became a ghost in the woods, setting snares for rabbits, foraging for edible roots and berries, collecting rainwater in broad leaves. The man her stranger slept, fought fever, and slowly, incrementally, began to mend. His body healed, but his spirit remained shrouded. The nightmares were the worst. He would thrash and cry out in a guttural, archaic dialect, shouting names like Theron and Stay Back, Kaelan, before waking drenched in sweat, remembering nothing. One evening, as they shared a meager meal of roasted tubers, he turned his sightless face toward her. "You never speak of your past, Lyra. Why were you alone in these cursed woods?" The question hung in the air. She had locked her pain away, but his gentle tone picked the lock. "I was cast out," she said, the words ash in her mouth. "My pack, the Night Fangs, found me, wanting. Omegas are seen as weak links. They severed theirs." The air grew heavy with his anger, a palpable heat that surprised her. "That is not weakness," he said, his voice low and fierce. "That is a failure of their spirit, not yours. To discard kindness, it is the deepest stupidity. It is the way of our world." "Then the world is wrong," he stated with a conviction that brooked no argument. Who would stop to save a ruined stranger, possess more true strength than any alpha who rules through fear. Flustered, Lyra changed the subject. "We must call you something. I cannot keep thinking of you as the man in the cave." A faint smile touched his lips. "What do you suggest?" She observed him. Even frail and seated, he had a regal bearing, a quiet authority that seemed ingrained in his bones. His nobility was not of title, but of essence. "Kaelan," she said. "It means powerful warrior in the old tongue." He laughed, a dry, rusty sound, "A warrior who cannot walk or see. The irony is not lost on me. You are fighting," she insisted. "Every breath you take in this place is a battle." The name fits Kaelan. He tested the word. "Very well, I am Kaelan. And you, Lyra, are my—" He hesitated. "Your friend," she offered shyly, the concept fragile and new. "My light." He corrected softly. "You are my light." In this endless night, the following week saw a shift. As Kaelan's leg strengthened, he insisted on helping. He learned the cave's layout by touch, organizing their meager supplies with meticulous care. He kept the fire fed, his hands becoming adept at judging heat and distance. He even attempted to cook, resulting in a charred, inedible mess that sent them both into fits of helpless laughter. A sound so foreign to Lyra it felt like breaking a bone to reset it. Kaelan began to share fragments, not memories but sensations. "I remember a vaulted ceiling of silver stone," he said one night, "and the scent of frost blossoms. There were two of us, identical in face, but not in heart. We had a game, we would switch places. No one could tell us apart, not even our sternest tutor." His expression darkened, but something changed. A shadow grew between us. Duty, perhaps, or expectation. "You remember a brother?" Lyra asked gently. "I remember a reflection," Kaelan whispered. Troubled, a reflection that started to look back at me with different eyes. The most terrifying moment came during a thunderstorm. The sky cracked open, and the cave trembled. With each thunderclap, Kaelan flinched violently. "The storm," he cried out, hands flying to his head. "I remember the storm, and the knives in the rain. They weren't rogues, they wore uniforms. They were our guards." He began to hyperventilate. "They knew me. They called my name, and then they raised their blades. It was an execution, not an ambush." Lyra rushed to him, grasping his shaking shoulders. "Kaelan, listen to me. You are safe. You are hidden. What if they find me? What if my being here brings death to your door?" Her grip tightened. "Then we face it together. You are not alone anymore. Neither of us are." He collapsed against her, his forehead pressed to her shoulder, his breath slowly steadying. In that moment, Lyra made a silent vow. She would protect this broken prince of her heart, no matter the cost. A month after finding Kaelan, supplies run critically low. Lyra had to risk a trip to the trading post at Crossroads Ford, a squalid place where questions were few but danger was high for a lone female emigger. She kept her hood up and traded her carefully cured pelts for salt, proper bandages, and a small, sharp dagger, her first real weapon. She was bartering for a wool blanket when the conversation at the next stall turned her blood to ice. Official proclamation from the keep. "Just came in on the royal courier," a grizzled merchant said. Spitting into the dust, Prince Kaelin's been declared dead, lost in the Whispering Woods 6 months back. King Theron's named a week of mourning. Kaelan, 8, his companion grunted. The quieter twin, Shame, heard he was the decent one. Unlike that cold fish Theron, they ever find a body, nor just enough blood to paint a picture. Rogues most like, or maybe he just ran, couldn't handle the pressure of the crown. Lyra's mind reeled. Kaelan, the name from Sealand's nightmares. Theron, the brother, the reflection. The king, the bloodline sigil on his chest, the crescent moon and thorns of House Silverspire. The pieces crashed together with dizzying force. Her Kaelan was Prince Kaelin Silverspire, the lost twin brother of the Alpha King. She rushed back to the woods, her heart a frantic drum. When she reached the cave, Kaelan was waiting, his head tilted. "Your heartbeat is a sparrow's wings," he said. "What happened?" She knelt before him, taking his hands. "Kaelan, the things you remember, the silver stone, the twin, the uniforms. I heard news in the town. The Alpha King's brother, Prince Kaelin, was declared dead 6 months ago, lost in these very woods. He went perfectly still. The air around him seemed to crackle. Kaelan, he breathed. Yes. That is the name, my name, Kaelan. And my brother, Theron." His blind eyes widened as internal lock snapped open. "Theron, the attack. It was the royal guard, my own brother's men. He sent them to kill me." "We don't know that," Lyra said, though the same horrific suspicion chilled her. "Who else could command them? Who else would benefit from my disappearance?" His voice was a raw wound. "I was a threat, the spare heir, the one some nobles whispered might be kinder, more just." A sob racked him. "My own twin, my other half. He ordered my death." Lyra held him as the storm of memory and betrayal broke over him. When his tears subsided into numb shock, she spoke with a steadiness she didn't feel. "We cannot stay here. If the king believes you are dead, you are safe for now. But if he ever suspects, I have to confront him," Kaelan said, a new, steely resolve in his tone. "I have to look into the eyes of my brother and ask him why. He is the most powerful alpha on the continent. You are blind and barely able to walk. It would be suicide. Then what is your plan, Lyra?" he demanded, despair creeping back in. "To hide in this cave forever." She took a deep breath, the enormity of her next words settling on her. "No, we go to Moonshadow Keep, but not to confront, to uncover. We go in secret. We find proof. We learn the truth of that night, and we find out who in that castle is truly loyal. Then, and only then, do you reveal yourself." Kaelan was silent for a long time. "You would do this, walk into the viper's nest with me?" "I told you," she said, squeezing his hands. "We face it together." The journey to the Frostfang Mountains was a brutal test of endurance. They travelled by night, moving slowly to accommodate Kaelan's limp. Lyra's skills kept them fed and hidden. Along the way, Kaelan's memories continued to return in jagged shards, the layout of secret passages in the keep, the faces of a few loyal old servants, the complex web of court politics. "Lord Varek," Kaelan said one day as they rested in a hollow, "he was master of whispers for our father. A spider in the shadows. If there was a plot, he would know of it, but whose side he is on." He shook his head. "And Lady Alara, our half-sister. She was always caught between Theron and me. Her mother was from a rival tribe. She has her own ambitions. Lyra absorbed it all, building a map in her mind not of geography, but of allegiance and danger. Moonshadow Keep was not just a castle. It was a mountain carved into a fortress, its spires piercing the clouds, walls gleaming like polished bone in the moonlight. It was breathtaking and utterly terrifying. Using Kaelan's recalled knowledge, they slipped through a forgotten drainage tunnel that emptied into the lower kitchens. The smell hit Kaelan first, roasting meat, stone, cold iron, and a pervasive floral perfume that made him grimace. The king's scent, he muttered, heavier than I remember, more oppressive. They moved like ghosts through the servant corridors, Kaelan's hand on the wall, Lyra guiding him. Their target was the Chamber of Echoes, a disused room behind the ancient library where Kaelan said he and Theron, as boys, had shared secrets. It would be their hiding place. They were to turn away when a door swung open. A tall, stern-faced man in captain's armor stood there, a tray in his hand, his eyes sharp as a hawk's, locked on them. Halt, who are you? Servants are not permitted in this wing. Lyra's blood froze, but Kaelan stepped forward, his head high. Captain Rylan, he said, his voice shedding its woodland softness for a tone of cool command. Still delivering the king's midnight tea yourself. Some habits die hard. Captain Rylan dropped the tray. The porcelain shattered on the flagstones, a sound like a gunshot in the silent hall. He stared, his face draining of colour. By the moon, it cannot be. Prince Kaelin, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Kaelan said, a ghost of his old wryness in his voice. But my return is a secret, Rylan. A secret that will determine whether this kingdom stands or falls. Do you understand? Rylan was a soldier, a man of instant loyalty and assessment. He looked from Kaelan's blind eyes and ragged state to Lyra's fierce, protective stance. He fell to one knee. My prince, he breathed, the king, he has been a storm of grief and rage, but if what you suspect is true. He stood, your secret is mine. What do you need? Sanctuary, information, and eyes, Kaelan said. We need to see what my brother does not want seen. Rylan nodded. Come, there is a place. Rylan hid them in a secure, windowless storeroom near the guards' barracks, bringing food, medicine, and clean clothes. He also brought news, each piece more troubling than the last. The king has changed, my prince, Rylan reported, his voice low. The grief hardened into something cold. He trusts only a inner circle, Lord Vorek, General Marcus, and Lady Alara. Kaelan stiffened at the last name. Alara is close. To him closer than ever. She is his chief advisor in all but name. Some whisper she is the true power now, feeding his paranoia, isolating him, and the investigation into my death, officially closed. Blamed on rogue lichens from the Blackwood clan. Unofficially, Rylan hesitated. Lord Vorek conducted it. He was efficient, perhaps too efficient. Evidence that pointed elsewhere seemed to vanish. A plot was forming in the gloom, not just a simple fratricide, but a palace coup. Theron might have given the order, but who had planted the idea? Who stood to gain from removing the compassionate prince and leaving a grief-stricken, manipulable king? Lyra, in her simple servant's dress borrowed from Rylan's discreet wife, began to move. Posing as a new maid assigned to the upper floors, she kept her eyes and ears open. She saw King Theron once. A figure of majestic sorrow pacing the battlements, his face as handsome and cold as carved ice. She saw Lady Alara, breathtakingly beautiful with hair like winter wheat and eyes like chips of glacier eyes that missed nothing as she threaded her arm through her brother's. One evening, while cleaning an antechamber, Lyra overheard a conversation. Through a partially open door to the royal study, the northern lords are restless. Theron, Alara's voice was smooth as honeyed wine. They still speak of Kaelan's proposed reforms. They need a reminder of your strength, a show of Force, I am tired of shows, Alara, Theron's voice replied, weary and brittle. I am tired of blood. Strength is the only language they understand, she purred, the only language that keeps our sister queen in her place across the sea. Do not let your softer feelings unmake our father's kingdom. There was a long silence. You sound like Varric. Lord Varric understands the realities of power, as do I. We are here to help you bear its weight, brother, to be the sharp edge where you cannot. Lyra crept away, her mind racing. Alara and Varric were a team, steering the king toward tyranny, using Kaelan's death as both a weapon and a shield. Meanwhile, with Ryland's help, Kaelan arranged a clandestine meeting with an unlikely ally, the elderly archivist, Master Corvin, a man who had dandled both princes on his knee. In the dust-scented silence of the restricted archives, Kaelan revealed himself. Tears welled in the old man's eyes. My boy, we mourned you. After the emotional reunion, they got to work. Corvin provided scrolls of guard rotations from 6 months ago, supply manifests, correspondence ledgers. It was Lyra, cross-referencing the lists with a keen eye for detail. Who found the first solid thread? Look, she whispered, pointing. The night you were attacked, the regular palace guard stationed at the postern gate were replaced. The order was signed by General Marcus, but here in the margin, there's a procurement note for silver-tipped bolts for the royal hunt. Its initial D, Alara, Kaelan breathed. She has no official military authority. Why would she be ordering specialized weaponry? And silver-tipped bolts are not for hunting deer, Lyra said, horror dawning. They're for hunting werewolves, for a guaranteed kill against a royal, whose healing is strong. The trap was more elaborate than they had imagined. Alara had orchestrated it. Marcus had provided the men, and Varric had covered the tracks. But to what end? Theron still held the crown. The answer came from the shadows, literally. As Lyra returned to their hidden room late one night, a figure melted from an alcove. It was a young woman. Her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. It was Sable, Lady Alara's personal maid. I know who you are, Sable whispered urgently to Lyra. The Omega who walks with a ghost. You need to leave. Now, she knows someone is prying. She set a trap in the West Tower archives. If your prince goes there seeking the treaty with the High Queen, he will walk into a cell. Why are you telling me this? Lyra asked, suspicious. Sable's face crumpled. Because I was the one who polished the silver tips of those bolts. I heard her and Lord Varric laughing about the spare air being removed. And now she plans to remove the king. She's been slowly poisoning him. 4 months. Grief, they'll say. A broken heart. Then, with no male heir, the crown will pass to her. She and Varric will rule. The final, monstrous piece of the puzzle snapped into place. Kaelan had never been the ultimate target. He was merely an obstacle. Theron was the prize. Alara was clearing the board to seize it for herself. Lyra ran. She had to get to Kaelan. The revelation would break him, but it would also free him. His brother was not his killer. He was a fellow victim, a puppet king being bled dry. They had to act, and they had to act now. The hour was late, and the poison was already in the king's cup. The words of Sable, the terrified maid, rang in Lyra's ears like a death knell. She's been slowly poisoning him. Lyra's flight through the stone corridors was a blur of panic and purpose. She found Kaelan with Rylan in their hidden room, reviewing a map of the castle's secret passages. Kaelan, she gasped, bursting in and closing the door swiftly behind her. It's not what we thought. It's worse. Between ragged breaths, she spilled Sable's story. The silver-tipped bolts, Alara's laughter. The slow, insidious poison meant. For the king, Theron didn't order your death, she finished, watching Kaelan's face. He's as much a prisoner as you were in the woods. Alara and Varric are removing you both. She intends to be queen. The emotions that warred on Kaelan's face were devastating, profound relief so potent it made him sway, followed by a Torrent of fury and fear for his brother, the betrayal from a half-sister cut deeper, perhaps, than that of a twin. The poison, Kaelan's voice was gravel. We have to get to him. Now, Rylan. Can you get us into his private chambers? Rylan's face was set in grim lines. The king's personal guards are loyal to him, but they are also loyal to the chain of command. General Marcus commands them, if we move openly. Marcus will be alerted, then we do not move openly. Kaelan said, the Prince of Strategy reawakening within him. Lyra, Sable said Alara knows someone is prying. The trap in the West Tower is a diversion. We must give her a mouse to catch. While the lions move elsewhere, a dangerous plan took shape, built on trust and desperation. Rylan would discreetly reach out to the king's personal physician, an old man named Halvar who had delivered both princes. If anyone could confirm the poisoning and be trusted, it was him. Meanwhile, Lyra would play the part of the curious mouse with her heart hammering against her ribs. Lyra went to the West Tower archives just before dawn. The time Sable had indicated the trap was set. She made enough noise to be heard, rustling through scrolls about border treaties. As predicted, 2 of General Marcus's personal guards appeared, their faces stern. You are not authorized here. One growled, grabbing her arm, I was sent by Master Corvin. Lyra protested, letting fear colour her voice. For the trade ledgers, tell your story to the general. The guard sneered, marching her away as she was taken. She saw a flicker of movement in a dark doorway across the courtyard. Captain Rylan observing. The trap had been sprung, and Alara's eyes would now be on the captured spy, while Lyra was being held in a small, windowless cell in the guard barracks. A calculated risk. Kaelan and Rylan made their move. Dressed in the cloaks of the king's own shadow guard, a unit so secret only Rylan and the monarch knew its full roster. They slipped into the royal wing via a passage behind a tapestry in the Hall of Ancestors. They found King Theron in his solar, not on his throne, but slumped in a chair by a dying fire. He looked gaunt, his golden hair lank, his famous vitality replaced by a waxen pallor. He was staring into the flames, a half-empty goblet of wine in his hand. Leave me, he murmured. Without looking up, his voice drained. I cannot, brother, Kaelan said softly, pushing back his hood. Theron's head snapped up. For a moment, disbelief rendered him mute. Then, a tremor went through him. A ghost, he whispered, his eyes wild. My grief conjures you now. I am no ghost, Theron, Kaelan said, stepping into the firelight. Though I have been in a kind of death. Theron stared, his gaze devouring the face so like his own, lingering on the milky, blind eyes. A choked sound escaped him, part sob, part laugh. He staggered to his feet, his hand outstretched, stopping just short of touching Kaelan's face, as if still afraid he would dissolve. Kaelan, your eyes, a parting gift from the assassins you did not send, Kaelan said, his voice thick with emotion. Theron's face crumpled. I did not. By the blood of our mother, I did not. I have spent every day since you vanished drowning in regret for our last argument, searching for your killers. His eyes narrowed, the alpha sharpness cutting through his weakness. You said assassins, not rogues, men in Royal Guard uniforms. Theron, led by Captain Yarek, under General Marcus's command. The name hit Theron like a physical blow. Marcus and Yarek was reported killed by rogues a week later. The pieces began to align in his mind, and with them, a dawning, terrible understanding. Alara, he breathed the name a curse. She convinced me Marcus was the only one I could trust. She brought me that wine herself tonight. He looked at the goblet in his hand, as if it were a viper, and hurled it into the fireplace. The wine hissed on the coals, emitting a faint, acrid smell that confirmed their worst fears. At that moment, the door opened. Lady Alara stood there, a serene smile on her face that froze when she saw the trio. Her eyes flicked from Theron's horrified face to Kaelan's blind stare to Ryland's defiant stance. The mask slipped for only a second, revealing a core of pure, icy malice. "Brother," she said smoothly, recovering, "I heard voices, you should be resting." Her gaze settled on Kaelan. "And who is this visitor? A lost pilgrim?" "He is my brother, Lyra," Theron said, his voice gaining strength from his rage. "The brother you told me was devoured by beasts, the brother your allies tried to murder." Lyra's smile vanished. "You are unwell, Theron. Grief and poison have addled your mind." She didn't bother to deny it. "Guards, no one came." Ryland stepped forward. "Your guards at this post are currently detained by my men." For the first time, fear flickered in Lyra's glacial eyes. She took a step back. "This is treason." "No," Kaelan said, his blind eyes eerily fixed on her. "This is justice, for our father, for Theron, for me." Lyra's hand dove into the folds of her gown, pulling out a small, ornate dagger. But she was not aiming for the king or Kaelan. With a snarl of pure hatred, she lunged at Lyra, who had just been released by Ryland's men and had entered the room drawn by the commotion. "You meddling Amiga vermin." Lyra froze, but Kaelan moved with startling speed. He couldn't see the blade, but he heard the rush of movement. Sensed the malicious intent, he shoved Lyra aside and caught Lyra's wrist, twisting it with a sharp, efficient motion. The dagger clattered to the floor. He held her fast, his strength returned, his face a stone mask of judgment. "Your plot ends here, sister," he said, his voice low, and for now the unraveling of the conspiracy was swift and merciless. With the king's authority reclaimed and Captain Ryland's loyal guards securing the castle, General Marcus was arrested in his quarters. Lord Vorak attempted to flee, but was caught at the postern gate. A bag of gold and damning letters from a rival kingdom in his possession. The scope of the treachery was vast. They had planned to frame the Blackwood clan, spark a war, and seat Lyra as a puppet queen under foreign influence. In the dungeons, Lyra remained defiant, spitting venom until the end. "You are always the weak one, Kaelan," she sneered, a bleeding heart. "Theron was a tool, and you were just in the way." Her words meant to wound, but they fell on solidified ground. Kaelan had faced the true darkness in the woods. A bitter half-sister held no power over him anymore. The physical healing began. Under the care of the physician Halvar, the antidote to the slow poison was administered to King Theron. His strength returned day by day, color seeping back into his face. But the emotional healing between the brothers was a more fragile process. They walked together on the high battlements, the wind whipping around them. "I said terrible things to you," Theron began, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "I let pride and father's voice in my head convince me your compassion was a flaw, and I accused you of becoming a tyrant," Kaelan replied. "I saw only the crown, not the weight it placed on you. We both failed to truly see each other. I will make it right," Theron vowed, his voice fierce. "Your name will be cleared, your place here by my side will be restored. The council will hear the truth." Kaelan was silent for a long moment. "My place," he said quietly, "that is what I must discover, Theron. The man who came back from the Whispering Woods is not the same prince who left." The public revelation was a spectacle of high drama. In the grand courtyard, before the packed court and a summoned public, King Theron presented his brother alive. The gasps were audible, the shockwaves palpable. He laid bare the entire conspiracy, exonerating Kaelan and condemning the traitors. The crowd's murmur of sympathy for the lost prince turned into a roar of outrage at the betrayal. But when Theron announced that Prince Kaelin would be reinstated with full honors and a co-regency, Kaelan stepped forward. He raised a hand for silence, and the crowd stilled, captivated by the sight of the blind prince who carried an aura of hard-won wisdom. "I thank my brother, the king, for his trust." Kaelan's voice carried clear and strong. "But I must Decline a co-regency. The crown is yours, Theron, and you wear it with a new clarity. My path lies differently. He turned his head slightly, as if sensing her in the crowd. I was saved in the wilderness not by a warrior or a lord, but by an Omega who had been told she was nothing. She taught me that true leadership is not about wielding power from a throne, but about seeing the worth in those whom the world overlooks. He announced the founding of the Moonshadow Haven, a sanctuary and academy in the reclaimed lands near the Whispering Woods, a place for rejected Omegas, for wounded warriors, for any who fell through the cracks of their rigid society. It would be a center of healing, learning, and new beginnings. That, Kaelan finished, is the duty I choose, to build rather than to rule. The silence that followed was profound. Then broke into tumultuous, respectful applause. Theron, though surprised, clasped his brother's shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. He had his brother back, not as a rival, but as an ally of a different kind. With the political storm settled, attention turned to Kaelan's blindness. The healer Morgana approached him with a solemn proposal. The ritual we attempted before was for physical healing, my prince. There is another, older one. The ritual of remembered light. It does not seek to repair the eyes, but to awaken the mind's own sight. It is perilous. It forces you to walk through your deepest darkness, your most painful memories, and find the light within them. If you falter, your mind could break entirely. Kaelan did not hesitate. I have already walked through darkness. I am not afraid of my memories anymore. Lyra was afraid for him. Kaelan, is it worth the risk? You have already found your way. He took her hand. I want to see the sunrise with you, Lyra. I want to see the color of your courage in your eyes. I want to witness the world we are going to build. Please, let me try. The ritual was held in the castle's oldest chamber, a natural cavern beneath the foundations where the first Silverspire king had pledged his oath. The air hummed with latent magic. Morgana and her acolytes formed a circle, their chants a low drone that vibrated in the bones. Kaelan sat at the center, clad in simple white linen. Lyra was permitted to stay at the edge, her presence his anchor. As the chanting peaked, Kaelan gasped, his body going rigid. He was no longer in the chamber. He was back in the rain-lashed clearing, seeing through his own eyes for the first time since the attack. The sneer on Captain Yarek's face, the glint of the silver bolt. He felt the searing pain, the terror. He relived the fall into darkness. Then he was in the cave, blind and terrified, hearing Lyra's gentle voice for the first time. He experienced the bone-setting agony, the fever dreams, the slow dawning of trust. He walked through the memory of learning his brother might have betrayed him, and then the greater pain of learning his sister had. He faced Alara's hatred, Theron's grief, his own despair. Each memory was a shard of glass he had to pick up and see clearly, not as a wound, but as a part of his map. The final memory was not a pain, but a feeling. Lyra's hand in his, her promise, we face it together, the sound of her laughter in the cave, the steadfast loyalty that asked for nothing. In the ritual chamber, a soft gasp echoed. Lyra watched, tears streaming as Kaelan's milky eyes began to shimmer, not with sight returning to the iris, but with an inner luminescence, like water reflecting moonlight. He wasn't seeing the physical world, but he was perceiving it. The chanting ceased. Kaelan blinked slowly, then turned his head unerringly toward Lyra. His eyes still held the clouded hue, but they were no longer vacant. They were focused, aware, alive with a deep, knowing light. Lyra, he whispered, a smile spreading across his face. Your hair is the color of walnut wood in the firelight. Your eyes, they hold the storm and the calm after. I see you. He could not see shapes or colors in the conventional way. Instead, he perceived the essence of things, the warmth of a soul, the truth of her intention, the unique energy of a person or place. It was a sight more profound and more truthful. than any he had possessed before, work began on the Moonshadow. Haven with the fervour of a sacred mission, Kaelan, with his new, profound perception, could sense the best places for foundations, the purest water sources, the spots where peace naturally settled. Lyra was his practical hands, organising the crews of volunteers, former soldiers, craftsmen, and, increasingly, Omegas who had heard the story and dared to hope.
One day, a contingent from the Nightfang pack arrived, led by a shame-faced beta. They brought a formal apology from Alpha Brutus and an offer of restitution. Lyra stood before them, no longer the cowering girl, but the foundress of a haven. "I do not seek your gold or your guilt," she told them, her voice steady. "I seek change. Send us those you would cast out. Let them find their purpose here. That is the only restitution that matters." The beta nodded, humbled. The first bricks of a new understanding between packs were laid. Kaelan and Lyra's partnership deepened into an unshakable bond. They spent their days planning, building, teaching. He taught history and strategy. She taught herbalism and survival. In the evenings, they would walk the burgeoning grounds, Kaelan describing the auras of the new saplings, Lyra describing their physical form. One such evening, by the half-built central hall, Kaelan stopped. He turned to her, taking both her hands. The air was sweet, with the scent of sawdust and evening blooms. "Lyra Moonshadow," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I gave you back my life, my name, and my family. But more than that, you gave me a purpose. You saw a man in the ruins and called him a gift. You saw a broken prince and called him a friend. Will you walk the rest of this path with me, not as my caretaker or my ally, but as my partner in every sense? Will you build this life, this haven, this future by my side?" He did not have a ring. Instead, he placed in her palm a smooth, river-worn stone they had found on their first day surveying the land. One half was dark shale, the other pale quartz. "Two halves, different yet whole together," he said. Lyra looked from the stone to his face, to the haven rising around them, a testament to their shared dream. This was not a proposal born of fleeting passion, but of deep, abiding respect, partnership, and love forged in the darkest of fires. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure, 1,000 times yes. Their union was celebrated at the haven itself, under the open sky, surrounded by the people they had gathered, the rejected, the healed, the hopeful. King Theron stood as Kaelan's witness, his eyes bright. Ravenna, who had proven her loyalty by helping root out the last of Varric's spies, stood with Lyra. They pledged themselves not with grand titles, but with promises of mutual support, shared vision, and unwavering faith. It was a new kind of royalty. Years flowed like the river beside Moonshadow Haven. The sanctuary blossomed into a beacon. Omegas became skilled healers, gardeners, scholars, and guardians. Wounded warriors found peace tending the fields or teaching their skills. The rigid boundaries between ranks began slowly to blur within its walls, setting an example that gently rippled outward. Lyra and Kaelan never ruled from a throne, but their influence was immense. They were counselors to the king, ambassadors to other packs, and parents to a growing found family of orphans and lost souls they took in. Kaelan, with his sight of essence, became a legendary judge and mediator, seeing truth where others saw only words. One autumn evening, with leaves again falling like fire, Lyra found Kaelan at the edge of the Whispering Woods, now no longer a place of fear, but a protected grove. He was listening. "The woods don't whisper of nightmares anymore," he said, sensing her approach. "They whisper of growth, of secrets that are now safekeeping, not threats." Lyra slipped her hand into his. Do you ever miss it, the castle, the court? He shook his head, his perceived gaze taking in the vibrant, peaceful aura of the haven behind them. I was a prince there. Here I am a man. Here with you I am whole. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in triumphant hues of purple and gold. Their story was not one of reclaiming a lost crown, but of forging a new one, a crown woven from compassion, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even in the deepest darkness, a single act of kindness could ignite a light powerful enough to guide a kingdom home. The rejected Omega and the blind prince had not just found each other, they had built a new song from the broken notes of their pasts, a melody that we echo through the mountains for generations to come, a timeless hymn of hope rebuilt. The great hall of Moonshadow Haven was filled not with the silence of stones, but with the vibrant hum of life. Sunlight, pure and golden, streamed through high windows that Lyra had insisted upon, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny fairies. Where once there was only the echo of wind, now there was the sound of a loom clacking, the murmur of a lesson in herb lore, and the distant laughter of children in the courtyard. At the head of the hall, at a simple table of polished oak, sat Lyra and Kaelan. Before them was not a map of territories or a scroll of laws, but a planting chart for the spring gardens and a list of names, new arrivals seeking sanctuary. Kaelan's fingers traced the raised markings on the parchment, his head tilted as he listened to the hall's unique symphony. The woman from the Pinefall pack, his voice a low rumble that held no trace of the broken rasp from the woods. Her aura is still spiked with fear, but beneath it there's a steadfast determination, like deep-rooted cedar. Put her with Alara in the weaving room. The rhythmic work will calm her, and Alara's quiet strength will be a guide. Lyra made a note, a smile touching her lips. This was their governance, not decree but perception, not command but connection. Kaelan, with his sight of essences, perceived the hidden strengths and wounds of their people. Lyra, with her practical wisdom and boundless empathy, found the place where those strengths could grow. A young boy, perhaps 10 years old, with eyes too old for his face, approached their table hesitantly. He was an Omega from a coastal pack, abandoned for his small size. He held a crude wooden carving of a wolf. "For the hall," the boy mumbled, not meeting their eyes. Kaelan turned toward him, his clouded eyes somehow gentle. "May I?" he asked, extending a hand. The boy placed the carving in his. Kaelan's fingers explored the grooves and planes. "You have a warrior's heart in your hands, Finn. The lines are bold, decisive. This wolf is not snarling, it is guarding." Finn's head shot up, surprise wiping the shame from his features. "How did you know my name? And, yes, I made him to guard the gate." "Your name is whispered in the timber of this piece," Kaelan said, handing it back, "and a guard is what we need. Report to Captain Rylan at the East Gate after your lessons. Tell him I sent you to learn the watch schedules." The boy's chest swelled, and he scurried off, his bearing entirely transformed. Lyra reached over, her hand covering Kaelan's. "You didn't just give him a duty, you gave him his pride back." "You taught me how," he replied, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "You saw a prince in the rebel and gave him a purpose. I am merely following your example." Their peace was a living, breathing thing, built day by day. King Theron visited often, his once stormy aura now settled into a steady, resilient warmth. He no longer wore a crown within the haven's walls, and the brothers would walk for hours, talking of trade routes and border patrols with an ease they had never known. The shadow of the throne no longer lay between them. One evening, years after the haven's founding, a different kind of visitor arrived. An elderly woman, her back bent but her eyes sharp as flint, was led into the hall. She was accompanied by warriors bearing the crest of the distant, reclusive Stone Mane pack from the northern peaks. She was their elder seer, Althea. Prince Kaelin, foundress Lyra, Althea's voice was like stones grinding together. I have walked for 3 moons to see the truth of the tales, the blind king who sees souls, the Omega queen who builds kingdoms of kindness. We are no king or queen here, elder, Lyra said respectfully, offering a seat. Are you not? Althea countered, her gaze piercing. You rule the most precious kingdom of all, the future. She turned her ancient eyes on Kaelan. Your sight, child, the ritual of remembered light. It is an old magic, one that does not simply grant a gift, it places a burden. You see truth. Can you bear to see what is coming? A chill, unrelated to the evening air, traced Lyra's spine. Kaelan grew very still. What do you speak of, elder? Althea leaned forward. The great balance is shifting. The betrayal you uncovered was not an end, but a symptom. A cold wind is stirring from the forgotten places, from the cracks in the world that your society's rigidness has created. It does not ride with armies yet. It whispers. It turns heart against heart, pack against pack, feeding on the very rejection and fear your haven seeks to heal. She placed a gnarled hand on the oak table. The world will need a new song to counter this whispering discord. Not a song of conquest, but of connection. You have written the first verse here, but the melody must spread. Kaelan was silent for a long time, perceiving the profound, unshakable truth in the old woman's words. You are asking us not to fight a war, he finally said. No, Althea agreed. I am asking you to wage peace, to be the beacon that does not just shelter the lost, but shows the blind world a new way to see. The storm that is coming will not break upon walls of stone, but upon the strength of bonds like yours, upon choices like Lyra's in the forest, upon justice like Theron's in his court. You have each faced the darkness within your own souls and chosen the light. Soon, many more will have to make that choice. The weight of the prophecy settled over them, not as a crushing doom, but as a solemn understanding. Their work was not done, it was just beginning on a larger scale. After Althea departed, Lyra and Kaelan walked to their favorite spot, a hill overlooking the haven, the whispering woods a dark, peaceful sea beyond. The first stars pricked the violet sky. It is a fearsome thing, she asks, Lyra murmured, leaning into Kaelan's side. It is the same thing we have always done, he replied, his arm around her. One choice at a time. One act of kindness at a time. We do not have to heal the world, my love. We simply have to keep lighting our lamp. Others, in their own darkness, will see it and remember they can light their own. He turned to her, his sightless eyes reflecting the starlight. The story they will tell, Lyra, is not that of a prince saved by an Omega. It will be the story of how a lost man and a discarded woman found each other, and in doing so, remembered how to build a home, and how that home became a hearth where others could warm their hands and find the courage to build their own. Lyra looked down at the haven. Lanterns were being lit in windows. The communal supper bell rang, a clear, sweet sound. She could see Finn, now taller and confident, speaking with Rylan by the gate. She saw a group of Omegas and warriors laughing together as they carried in the harvest. This was their answer to the whispering cold. Not a sword, but a supper bell. Not a fortress, but a home. Not a dynasty, but a family, chosen and built. Epilogue: The Unbroken Circle. Many years later, the legend of the blind seer and the Omega foundress was told across the continent. Moonshadow Haven was not the only sanctuary anymore. Its children had gone out and planted seeds of its philosophy in distant valleys and forests. The rigid lines of rank had softened, not by decree, but by the quiet, relentless proof of a better way. On the hill where they had stood that night, 2 stones rested side by side, simple and unadorned. They were not monuments to death, but waymarkers for the living. In the grand hall, now covered in intricate carvings contributed by generations of residents, an old woman with silver hair and eyes that held both storms and profound calm told the story to a circle of wide-eyed children. "And so," Lyra said, her voice still strong, "the prince learned that his true crown was not gold, but the trust of those he served. And the Omega learned that her true strength was not in never being broken, but in choosing every day what to build with the pieces." One child, a little girl with one brown eye and one blue, asked, "But what about the cold wind, the whispering darkness the old seer warned about?" Lyra smiled, a network of gentle lines spreading from her eyes. "Oh, it came, in many forms, in times of greed and fear and scarcity. But you see, when you know how to build a hearth, you are never without warmth. When you know how to see a person's true heart, you are never truly blind. The darkness whispers, but it cannot blow out a light that is shared from hand to hand, from heart to heart." She looked out the window, where a man with clouded eyes and a face etched with kindness was leading a young, newly rejected wolf toward the gardens, his hand on the youth's shoulder, pointing out auras only he could see. "The story never ends," Lyra whispered, more to herself than to the children. "It just changes hands. And as long as there is one person brave enough to kneel in the leaves and offer help to a stranger, the song continues." Outside, the wind carried not whispers of fear, but the scent of frost blossoms from the garden, the sound of a hammer on anvil, and the distant joyful chorus of a community at work. It was the song they had built, and it was unbroken.